Oritain was born out of the need to protect New Zealand exporters, and the whole idea was using forensic science to prove the origin of products to deal with the issues around counterfeit food fraud. Our first product was the humble apple, the ubiquitous apple, and that was the first one that we used to build our global data set. So we started out relying solely on forensic science. We've now moved into combining data science with forensic science, so it's really data science powered by forensic science. So we deal with food, we deal with fibre, we deal with pharmaceuticals. Our mission is simply to put truth into supply chain. We started in 2008, just prior to the horse meat scandal. We've seen a number of food scandals, the melamine scandal in China, as well as horse meat scandal. We've grown steadily. The last 7 years we've effectively doubled every year, so there's been a lot of demand in the last 5-6 years driven out of ESG.
Two things really happening, I think, in the world. The first is that there's legislative change and governments are demanding that companies prove to their consumers that a product is what it is, and it is from where they say it's from. And what Customs and Border Protection have said in the United States is that they intend to be more vigorous in terms of their testing. So rather than this going away, the pressure is going up. And actually in the United States, that could lead to very significant action against directors and companies and very big fines. But on top of all of that, actually, consumers are changing, particularly young consumers. The demand for services of a company like Oritain have exploded because we're really the only people in the world that have this type of technology. We have the database and we can, to a very, very high level, determine whether something actually meets the law or doesn't. But actually it's sort of broader than that as well. I mean, if you think about it in a world of ESG where people worry a lot about, again, the quality of the product, the authenticity of the product, it may not be that the law demands that they meet this level, it may be that the consumers want to know that. So it could be a very high-end luxury handbag maker, for instance, wants to be able to be 100% certain for its consumers that its leather is produced, say for instance in Italy or in a certain part of Italy.
Oritain's technology is what we think of as a chemical fingerprinting technology, and we're actually using a combination of forensic chemistry and data science as a way to authenticate or verify the origin of natural products. And the way that we do this is that every natural product that's grown all around the world, it actually imbibes the chemistry of its environment. So it imbibes the features of the soil chemistry or the rainfall or the temperature. And so all these features can actually be chemically analyzed within the product themselves. And kind of like a human fingerprint database, we develop what products look like, except we're focusing on their origin chemistry. For the testing, first we have to establish a baseline for the product that we're looking at. So that means that we go out in the world and we collect samples from their natural habitat. So that means collecting cotton directly from the farms or collecting apples from the trees. And so once we collect the population that we're interested in establishing, we then analyze their chemical attributes. And so these get analyzed and then stored in our database. They get investigated using our statistical models. And then once we have that established, we can then go to market and get test samples. So we can go to a store and get a cotton t-shirt, or go to the market and get an apple and then test it against the baseline to see if it's authentic or not. This technology has been around actually for decades. It's well known within the scientific literature. There are many publications, and because we're not actually doing something novel in the science, it's well known within the community and extremely robust. So it's admissible evidence in the court of law, and that's an important thing for governments. They want to ensure that the science is sound. We meet evidence for the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, as well as other acts that need to have that high degree of accuracy and that scientific robustness. The fashion industry, and particularly the cotton industry, it's very large and it's a fragmented and opaque supply chain. So that means there's many different players. Even for our brand partners at the very end of supply chain, they don't have a lot of insight in terms of what's happening in the very beginning. Things like the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act are putting onus on brands to have traceability and to have security in their supply chains.
We've been working with Oritain for 6 years. It's been an extremely exciting opportunity for really trying to find a way to authenticate the origin of our cotton and prove it through the entire supply chain. It's really critical, especially today in this world when you are uncertain of the origin or the process of the good flow, and trying to understand where your goods are originating from and how they're being moved through the supply chain. Without knowing where the goods come from, you don't understand the sustainability aspects. You can't prove or verify where the cotton's coming from. Therefore, you don't know the responsible farming practices that are applied, and you can't have credibility around the product that you're supplying to the end consumer. For Supima as a brand, our credibility and authenticity has always been at the cornerstone of everything that we do. For the last 40 years, we've applied a licensing program using the best technology at the time, which was a paper trail audit system. Ultimately, that's not sufficient enough because you can't prove the product that is related to the paper. The same issue arises when you're trying to do a digital assessment of that product chain and supply. You don't have the credibility. What Oritain does and is uniquely able to do is they're able to provide that true verification to match the physical with the digital or paper representation of what the product claim is.
We were the first Australian fashion retailer to partner with Oritain in 2019. We began working with Oritain to scientifically trace our verified Australian merino wool back to a small number of local farms, demonstrating responsible land management and animal welfare practices under the Responsible Wool Standard. In January 2020, we extended our partnership with Oritain to include cotton, verifying the fibres used in our famous heritage sweat back to Australian farms. Since then, the verified Australian cotton range has expanded to include a number of styles across the business, including our heritage tees, chinos, and our Peaky Polo. In 2024, we will expand our verified Australian cotton range to include our famous beach towels and heritage tote bags. Traceability is a key focus across the entire fashion industry as customers demand to know more about the backstory of their garments. Partners like Oritain have really helped us improve traceability within our supply chain. Our garments are tested at key stages of production, which means that there is involvement from the spinners, the fabric mills, and the garment manufacturers. When people are actively involved, not only can they drive positive change, but they're also often themselves champions.
People want to know where their products come from. The excuse of we don't know is no longer valid. Look, we can put a man on the moon. We surely should be able to know where our products come from. So people demand it, and more consumers and investors and regulators are demanding this level. We're seeing regulation come in. I think there's 28 laws around the world demanding transparency and holding companies accountable if they damage the environment or poor labour practices.
Everybody can make an impact. Some are going to be smaller than others, but every positive impact makes a positive impact for everyone.